First of all, thank you for having me and allowing me to share my story with your students. So my name is Tej Karki. I did my PhD from Northeastern University, and I also had an opportunity to teach urban sustainability and climate change one semester at Boston University, and I also taught international planning and policy at Tufts University. That is my US experience. But after that, now I am supervising PhD students in some Indian university online from Kathmandu. So my background is first architecture, then master's in urban planning, then PhD in public policy. So with all these kind of background, I am in Nepal communicating with communities, schools, and sharing my knowledge and experiences and trying to make a difference. With this brief introduction, I start my presentation. As you can see on the screen that I'm talking about human resilience to adverse climate. It's about a water crisis. I'll bring a story from Nepal's mountain. First, we'll talk about the human resilience issues that we identified in a settlement. Then after that, we'll draw lessons. What were the human resilience at play at that particular settlement? And besides human resilience, what were the other resiliences at work during water crisis? And what can we learn to cope with similar crisis in future that's forthcoming because of the climate change? And what we planners and architects should think for resilient plans and designs. So I'll try to connect at the end of the presentation to these themes as well. So I start my presentation. Before I say anything, I want to introduce where Nepal is located. Nepal is located in between China and India along the Himalayan range that comes all the way from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bhutan up to Myanmar. This is all a Himalayan range coming from east to west. And Nepal is situated on that. Nepal has 3 ecological regions. On the extreme north, you will see snow mountains. A little bit south, the green mountains, and further south, the plains that you can see in the down picture as well. So this is the context of the Nepal's geography. So now this ecological region, this Himalayan region is facing climate change problems. They are getting more warmer and warmer. That is what is the prediction. So it has warmed by 2.5 degrees between 1950 and 1999. And it is expected to grow over 5 degrees by 2100. This is the projection that we are seeing in the Himalayas. As a result of that, it is expected that 1/3 of the ice is likely to disappear by 2100 from the Himalayas. So what will happen if this is the case? So what will happen is if the ice from the mountains, ice and snow melts very fast and goes away, it will not allow a slow recharge of the groundwater. If the mountains' groundwaters are not recharged in a slow fashion, because the ice and snow has already melted fast, then there will be a shortage of water in the green hills. I mean, the springs will dry and there will be a shortage of water. And that is what is happening here in the Himalayan region. Since springs have dried up and people are trying their best to get water from any means, including the melted snow, etc. So this is the situation in the Himalayas. And as a result of that, people and livestock are facing serious water shortage. So To give you an idea what a crisis looks like, water crisis looks like, I'm telling you a story about a Rekcha settlement, which is in the far western Nepal that I have shown by a red star. So that is the location of Rekcha rural settlement, about which I'm going to tell you a story about that place. So it was a rural settlement of 115 houses. And in recent years, ponds have dried, and so did many water wells. So this is the situation. And water is available only for 3 months, May, June, July. Now you imagine how they are coping with this water crisis in the rest of the 9 months in this region. So you can see these two people are talking to a journalist lady, and they are saying that they have not taken a shower for a month because they cannot afford to use their scarce water. And one of them was saying that I use just 1 mug of water to wipe faces in the religious rituals. If there is some religious rituals, they need to do that. You'll use a mug of water to wipe his faces. And taking shower is a far, issue, yeah? So this is the situation they are going through. The next, the females are also hit hard by this crisis. No water to shower. A lady on the left-hand side is begging for water to clean her body to come out of the menstruation period. But the lady on the right-hand side is not allowing her the water, because if she does, she will be fined by the community. 500 rupees she will be fined, because water is scarce and water is only given for restricted use. So this is the situation of the females because of the water crisis. A local woman says that in extreme dry season, she takes her cows out of water just once a week. So imagine the animals living with water, having water just once a week. So how dire is the situation there? Next, to optimize the water, scarce water, to prevent from theft of the water, they have deployed a water guard. He regulates water and collects water service charges. And the service charge is based on the grains because it's a non-cash economy. 3.2 kg of wheat or grains for 2 jars of water. This is how water is served. Next, the school is there and the school transports a few jars of water for the kids. And in dry season, extreme dry season, they cannot give that water to them. And the students and their parents have to manage by themselves. Many students stay absent because parents leave home early for water search, and kids stay at home because there is no one to give them lunch and tiffin. So they stay home and stay absent at the school. This is the situation of this. The next is an 80-year-old woman have come to the well to lift a jar of water. I mean, if you see the 80-year-old woman in the United States, she will have health care. She has never seen before the water, drinking water shortage in her life. And she has a free ride from the state's rule. But here, the 80-year-old woman have come all the way from her settlement to lift a jar of water because there is no one to help. A 87-year-old Motiram says that his small granddaughter had gone to the well to get the water. As she was pulling water, she fell down in the well and she died. After that, he says that I stopped taking water from this well. So family numbers have dropped from 115 to 80. That means only 80 houses. People live in only 80 houses. The remaining people have already left because of this water shortage. So it is not that there have been no initiatives to bring water there. A journalist ran a YouTube story that I'm using here, and because of this story, I mean, people try to do something to address this problem. What they did is they went to the court and litigation, and the court had ordered that the basic rights be fulfilled as soon as possible in that area. But this order has not been implemented. Next, lift water project was proposed, but it has not succeeded in the area due to poor road access and weak government's commitment. So does this mean that the resilience is in crisis in this place? Yes or no? What do you think? Can anyone just think about this? Is the resilience in crisis in this rural settlement? Or no, it is not in crisis? Okay, we'll talk about that. But before that, let's say, what is resilience? Let's try to, understand what is resilience. Can anyone jump in and give the definition of what is resilience? I would appreciate that. I would very much appreciate that. But anyway.
Sure.
Okay.
I think
sure.
it's sorry, hi. I think
Sure.
it's the ability to withstand harsh conditions and adverse, environments, it rains, what have you.
Absolutely. Best try, and that is very close to the answer. I mean, that is that's absolutely. Any other definitions from other students? Okay, that's quite good. So the resilience, in a simple terms, is, as you say, the ability to cope with and adapt to a crisis such as water shortage. It is the ability to cope with and adapt to a crisis. So that is resilience. Okay, so that is the difference. So my question is, if so, how many types of resilience were at play in this story? The story of the Rekcha rural settlement. Can anyone tell how many types of resilience were at play in the story?
Would it be like the water guard, like them trying to adapt to like maybe looking after the water to make sure no one gets after it?
That's one good one answer. Yeah. Any other?
Maybe
The fact that livestock can only get water once a week. So controlling how much they intake.
Yeah. So one more?
They adapted by only taking baths when needed, then instead used like a mug of water to wash their face when it came to any kind of ritual services.
Yeah, absolutely. But I have categorized them into 4. It's my categorization, and I'll tell you that. So I see that there are 4 types of resilience were at play. The first is human resilience. The second is institutional resilience, that some of you said. I mean, the other is physical resilience, and the other is advocacy resilience. I'll describe them one by one. Human resilience, I think I don't have to say anything. I mean, these people have done whatever they could amidst the crisis to survive there. So they were very much resilient. They sacrificed a lot to survive the crisis. Okay, so this is already the human resilience was there at play. The next was institutional resilience. I think some of you said just now that they deployed a water guard because water is scarce, theft. They adopted user pay system to manage the water. And there was a charging system of which and there was a fine and fining system for misuse of water. So it is an institutional resilience was at play there. The next is physical resilience. I saw this as a physical resilience. Can you guess what I want to say by this slide? What is physical resilience?
Is that like a physical barrier to cover the water so people can't just access it at any time?
Okay. Any one more response? Physical resilience is once that girl fell down into the well and died, they learn. I mean, resilience is about learning and adapting to the situation. So they learn from that, and they have created a wooden cover on the well so that nobody falls. So they have developed a physical resilience. There may be several physical resilience that we can talk in planning and design also, but this is one thing we saw in this case, in this story. So this was a physical resilience, learning from the mistakes and adapting to make the situation better. Okay? So the next is advocacy resilience. So what I mean by advocacy resilience, can anyone try to interpret this? Yeah, the media covered the story and they voiced this message to all people, and people heard about it and they filed a lawsuit. And as a matter of fact, a pressure was created to do something. So this is advocacy resilience. Without advocacy resilience, the status quo may not change. You have to fight. Yeah. So this is advocacy resilience was also there at play. Yeah. So now I'm coming back to the same question. Does this mean that the resilience is in crisis in the place, or it is not in crisis? Resilience is at work in the place, or resilience is in crisis in this place? What do you think? Yes or no?
I would definitely say that it's at work, because
Sorry?
clearly I would say that resilience in this place is definitely at work. It's not lacking because we saw in the 4 different examples.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, it's at work. Resilience is at work. They are coping with the crisis. That is absolutely right. But at the same time, have we solved the water crisis problem? If it is not solved, then can we say that resilience is not at work really? The next is, what is the key message of this story? What key message this story is trying to give? Yeah, we can try. There's no right or wrong answer, but we all can try. Yeah, you have raised the hand. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Maybe that, yes, these people are very resilient. They are adapting as best as they can, but there is some upper limit to how much a person and a community can cope. And that it feels to me that it might be on like the verge of collapse if there's not immediate, very strong, targeted intervention on the part of like the larger community. So maybe some of those other aspects, maybe like the advocacy, resilience, it needs more effort on the part of others to deal with this from the outside.
Yeah, absolutely. Any more? What is the key message? I mean, there may be several messages, and all of you might be right, because it's a community issue, so several messages might. Yeah. So any one last try from any students?
Yes. I
Sure.
would say that it seems that even though there was many different approaches to try to solve the problem, I remember you mentioning that some of the approaches as far as transporting the water there had issues because of the roadways. It may just take more of a top-down approach as far as even other nations outside of that area trying to find solutions to help as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, we need both, we need top down, we need bottom up. If they collaborate and cooperate, I think it is helpful. Yeah, thank you for making a good try. But these are small messages, but I want to give a big message. Then I will come to other things. Before that, I saw a hand raised by Uma. Yeah, please go ahead.
I also thought one of the interesting messages from this could be like the idea of scale, because I think like you mentioned at the beginning of the lecture that 1/3 of the glacial reserves are gonna melt and that the temperature is gonna rise by 5 degrees. And I think like I don't think it's the village of 115 families that's responsible for that change, but I think they're the ones that have coped with it. And I think like it's interesting because like resilience can occur at the scale of their local government or like even within Nepal, but I wonder if there's a larger scale at which resilience and like adaptation would be required to prevent things from getting worse.
Yeah, absolutely. The scale is quite big. I mean, it's all whole Himalayan range will be facing problem. So that is also one key message. Yeah, absolutely. So let me try my own message. Maybe you can correct me if it is it needs some improvement. So what I think is so my lesson is like this, my key message. We all have to be resilient more than what we saw in this story, because more difficult days are ahead. Climate change impacts are not going away anytime soon. Even we act today, it will take 30 years. So 30 years we will be facing these water severe problems. So, and as you know, we have already said, I think 1/3 of glaciers will vanish. That means extreme shortage of water in the entire Himalayas. Yes? So this scale is quite big. So, so what I was saying is we have to be more resilient than these villagers in future. So the water crisis is likely to impact 1 billion population in South Asia and 200 million people in the mountains. So this is the thing. This is the, prediction. If we do nothing, this is the situation. So yes, the scale is too big. So what to do? Now the question is, yeah, there is a small scale serious problem, larger scale serious problem. What to do? What do we need to do? Can we make a try? Yeah, I understand it's a quite complex problem. So what to do is, again, the same thing. What to do is first promote individuals' ability to cope with and adapt to uncertainty like water crisis. The second, craft creative institutional mechanism that we also saw in the story, okay, to cope with the problem, to adapt with the problem. The third is embrace adaptive plan and design for human habitat. The design and plan should be adaptive to changing context, uncertainty, and crisis. And the final one is promote people's ability to raise voice for appropriate adaptable actions. So what this means to architects and planners? This means that planners and architects should create plans and designs adaptive to water crisis. In this particular story, we didn't see efforts for rainwater harvesting, as you can see on the left side. We didn't see anything in that village. We didn't see forestation. More forest will retain water and it will recharge the groundwater. We didn't see any kind of that effort. And in some hills, what people have started creating pond in the uphill so that the water sips and recharges the area. Or you can have water for a longer period if you put the plastic and things like that. Or you can do forestation and vegetation so that the water runs slowly and it gets recharged on the ground. So these are all the lessons for landscape architects, designers and planners. When they design not in the air, thin air, but they design in the place, and place has nature, place has ecological consequences. So we have to take note of that. But the thing is that planners and architects should not work on silos like physical resilience. I mean, the design aspect, by ignoring human resilience, institutional resilience, and advocacy resilience. If you are weak at these three and you are strong only at physical resilience, I don't think you will be able to make changes in the society. So architects and planners should think resilience from all those four aspects. This is what I want to say. Okay, so I think I'm quite at the end of the presentation. So my question with you is, does resilience means coping with and adapting to the crisis only? I also discussed a little bit earlier also. Or it is also coming out of the crisis. What do you think? What the villagers, did the villagers' resilience was about coming out of the crisis, or, yeah, so hand raising?
Yeah. So because like climate change is just like kind of difficult to like immediately like solve it and maybe the problem can go away. It's one of those things where like it's gonna take a while for it to go away. So in the meanwhile, we have to like adapt to it. So I think resilience is coping and adapting with crisis, because there are a lot of places where like even if like climate change were to even go away, the effects may still linger. So I think it's important to like maybe like, yeah, I think it's more of just like resilience of coping and adapting to what the problem is now, and trying to then like come at a point where it's basically like easier to manage as the time goes on.
Yeah. So in that village that I told you the story, was that resilience to cope with the crisis, or was it a resilience to come out of the crisis?
I think it's more coping.
Yeah, that is living with the crisis, surviving with the crisis. But if you want to come out of the crisis, and that adds another definition of resilience, means resilience is the ability to cope with and adapt to the crisis, and also transform if necessary, go to a new normal if necessary, so that you can bring some changes. So there is also a third dimension, but you didn't see that third dimension there. You saw coping and adapting, but not transforming. Transforming means having water in the village, having abundant water and greenery in the village is transforming. For that, you need leadership. Someone should work very hard, innovatively, creatively, proactively, to come out of that crisis and bring sufficient water in the village. Again, in order to do that, you have to work on these four resilience innovatively, creatively, and actively, so that people, maybe human people, might have to do differently to address that problem and solve it. Maybe there should be a different set of institutions that might bring change, or some kind of physical resilience that I showed just few slides there. You might have to have maybe water harvesting and ponding and things like that, maybe what and some else. So you have to be innovative, and you should be able to think out of the box in all these four things. And advocacy is very much a leadership. Yeah, you have to raise your voice and lead them from water crisis. So for that leader will work in all these four resilience things. And if that happens, then you will come from coping to transforming. Yeah. So this is I think the key message what I gave is that the more crises are ahead, and we need to be resilient. And what this story has told us is that we have to be resilient in these 4 areas. And if you are resilient in 4 areas, not only architects and planners, but every human being, individual, community, people might do better in the upcoming climate change and water crisis. So with this, I think I end the presentation here, and I like to have some questions if we have some more time. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Tej. It's quite interesting because we were having this conversation on environmental health and talking about, the role that the community can play, this issue of kind of advocacy. And now you are talking about, issues that are even broader because, I mean, most of the lecture was focused on environmental health as a discipline. And now we are talking about issues in our environment that sometimes are slightly out of our control or broader, right? So, and we have to deal with them in short term, long term, and we need to have kind of different layers of response.
Yeah.
So there are some of you who are not very active. Thomas, Talha, Irving, please go ahead, ask questions. We would love to hear from you.
And one interesting thing that came into my mind while studying this story is that, what was the health implications of very little water intake of people and then animals, was there a kidney kind of problem or was there other kind of problem? I mean, it's an interesting area to research. I didn't do that. I didn't investigate that, but it is important health implications, I think. So this is just, I'm sharing my thing, but I want to have more thoughts from,
I should confess that I think what's really surprising about your lecture is that you are talking about the context that we normally assume is not dealing with water, because I mean, but seeing the images of people suffering and having hard time bringing water, and in their background having these mountains full of snow is just, it's such a, I mean, shocking contrast to us.
So my approach today was to use a story as a means of communicating the issues.
And I know there are several students who have questions.
You mentioned that a sizable portion of the population of that town had left to go elsewhere. How are the places that those people are moving to coping with an influx of people when I suspect they may also be dealing with similar conditions?
For now, there are a lot of trends of migration. Some of them, they go for labor job in Middle East and something like that in a labor force. A lot of people go from Nepal. That may be the one case. And somebody might be migrating to the down hills in towns where water supply is better, or maybe going to other places, where the crisis is not so much. Every places don't have crisis. So that may, from crisis area to less crisis area, that may be the case. But I have not done research on this, but definitely the data is that there is a migration there because of this water. That is what the story has said.
But I really love Maya's question because she's talking about the impact of this environmental crisis, right, on other kinds of crises in the world. And many of us in the US news these days, we hear about the migration coming from South America, Central America. Some of this actually in reality having to do with environmental issues, right? And it's not kind of to some extent, I mean, in micro scale, it's not avoidable, but it's so important to note that these issues do not just affect that lead these kind of small communities. They have huge impact because many of these people are going to be the ones who are trying to immigrate to other countries. And that may result in some other cultural, political issues.
So one thing the villager was talking about is the cow in Nepal is considered, the cow is considered as a sacred animal. We should give everything clean and sacred thing to cow to eat. But the person was saying that because, on the one side, I need to give better water. On the other side, I don't have the water. So I'm giving all the wastewater, used water, home water to feed the cow for the drinking. So I mean, so that is a different dimension, maybe health of the cow, but maybe in some places, like you saw that in the mountain, they were tapping water from snow, melted snow, that may be contaminated. So yeah.
So my question is, you show us a small case study of a village, and then scaling this internationally, we have this exact same issue in Africa, for a very long time. I'm 28, and since I know myself, there has been a water issue in Africa. So obviously there have been some works and help from other countries around the world, but based on my knowledge, this issue never been resolved completely. So seeing this long-term case study comparing to the village in Nepal, so what has not been done that the humanity was not able to solve the African water issue in last maybe 100 or 200 years that we need to now step in differently, maybe in different area of the world that actually can bring a real resilience, not just not consuming water, but the solution side of the resilience.
Exactly. I mean, you should see the best practices all around the world in the similar context. Maybe this is a Himalayan context, may not be the same in Africa, slightly different, but there may be a similar best practices. And we can learn from best practices to address this issue. So far as researching all the best practices, I have not done so far. So I'm just representing this, but your point is very much valid that there must be a lot of learning ideas and approaches. And some of the approaches were, rainwater harvesting during rainy season and ponding on the uphills. So there may be several. So the lessons I can learn from you is that we should collect best practices. Although it may not exactly be the same, there must be a lot of insights. And that's a very good point.
Hi. So my question is, since we talked about the lack of water, we know water is like essential for good hygiene, cleaning yourselves, and we mentioned that a lot of people don't have the means for that, and that could lead to illnesses, infections. So how do the people combat that? Like, how do they keep themselves safe from infections, or how do they treat themselves? Is there any like preventative care, or just generally what's their situation when it comes to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, there are a lot of NGOs around. They are talking about sanitation, better toilets, clean water, but there was a story. I mean, in real sense, people go from outside and give them the solution, but that does not work. People are not using the toilets prepared by the planners or the NGOs and things like that. But definitely there are health campaigners, there are sanitation campaigners, there are clean water campaigners, but they are and for the very reason of health of the people. So there are a lot of work there, but it's not everywhere. And the water crisis, the water crisis in the hills must have added more problems to this clean water and sanitation. Yeah, but and again, I have to say that this is an important area of research on how water shortage has impacted on health of the people. And this is a very important research. I am not aware of it. If it is there, we can look at it, but it is a very good point. Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to add on to that because I was wondering what the life expectancy of those that live in that region, because you did mention that there was like an 80-year-old woman that was still moving around carrying water,
Yeah.
even though that
Yeah.
wasn't what she necessarily should have been doing, but she kind of needed to. So I was just kind of curious if that was like a typical age for someone to be able to reach, or was she more of like an anomaly because of, I guess, just happened to find her doing that kind of work at that time.
Actually, if you talk about general health of the hilly people, they live longer. Because they do up and down on the hills and work, they have to work manually. They are stronger, generally stronger. But if there is no infections or water contamination and things like that, that may have played a role. Maybe they may be more strong compared to the Western elderly people. They may be strong, but there's no way out also. If there's no way out, you will definitely be strong. And if you are desperate and you have to be strong yourself. There's a sanitation department, government departments. They might be running some programs. That's a sectoral. That is not there. The architects and planners might not have been involved in that case, but there are definitely the water engineers and sanitation engineers must be at work. Yeah, so I think most architects and planners, they work in cities in our country, and they do a lot of concrete buildings, get good salary and profit, fees, etc. And so I'm not sure whether they have reached out to address these problems, besides some NGOs and NGOs who are working in rural areas. So what I was trying to say is that, architects and planners, architects and planners, they work just for buildings and all, but there are some planners and architects who are working for mud houses or rural ecology, but very few. But what I want to say is planners and architects, they think that their job is only to design, provide solutions, not make change. So in certain areas, the planners and architects have to work for change. That means you have to bring the community out of water crisis, not just manage that water crisis that the villagers are doing. So what we architects do is we manage a building project, but we don't bring changes. I mean, creative buildings, if you create a creative buildings for landslides and all, and that is change. A creative, less water consuming buildings or construction materials, that may be a kind of change. But these are very good areas, but I'm not sure many architects are involved in this particular thing. But what I advocate is more and more architects should look into these aspects.
Thank you, Professor Karki. Mine is more or less a build up on what Ashley was actually referring to in that regard. That while there are no architects, there is a level of adaptation that has happened, and just reminds me of this book called Buildings Without Architects. I don't know if you know it, by John May. Maybe you can pick it up and read. So maybe it would be interesting to know the adaptation that has happened in this region because of this particular scarcity of water, etc., etc. And then the question that I really have is to do with the migration of these people from their areas to other places. But what happens if they are not able to migrate? What is the plan B for those that are not able to go? Because and home is home. Sometimes you just can't get up and run away all the time.
Yes.
So
Yes.
what happens in that regard?
A very good question. And out of 115, those 80 people living there, 80 houses, they are exactly living and coping that crisis there. They are there, and then because, you know, for some reason, their situation has not allowed them to migrate. That's why they are there. They cannot migrate for some reason. And they are there, and they are coping with the crisis with resilience, I think. Yeah.
Ula had the last question.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My question was more related to like, I remember at the beginning of your presentation, you shared a slide that showed some of the like effects of more ice melting, and it included flooding and landslides and stuff like that. And I think a lot of times flooding goes hand in hand with drought, ironically, in climate change scenarios. Like, and I think we saw that in Pakistan. I think now a couple years ago, like I think 1/3 of the country was flooded and it's neighboring Nepal. And I was just wondering, like, in terms of resilience, particularly as related to architecture, like, and I think you also touched on this with like with forestry being a potential solution. Like, how can built resilience deal with like kind of opposing climate disasters, i.e. like drought and flooding at the same time? And do you think dealing with those things together can prevent people from having to leave their homes at greater numbers? Or is that like the kind of thing where if you see two of those opposing issues, it's better to migrate, and like there's only so far that like local resilience could go?
Yeah. Actually, you know, when the time is too late, I mean, you have done nothing now, the powerful flood is going to come. Now, you cannot talk about at that time about, we should have done land use, we should have, you know, reduced that surface runoff, we should have reduced pavements, concrete pavements. That is not the time when powerful flood is coming to hit you. So that time, the resilience is to run away. We say retreat in planning. At that time, the only option you have. But if you have time, more long-term time, maybe 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, then, you know, you can think about, you know, minimizing pavements, more trees and everything and all. So resilience, I mean, that is called mitigation, I think. So the resilience, the landslides also, what I say is that you go to those settlements and educate them when if landslides happens, which is the safest route to run away. Where are the risks? Where are the vulnerable locations around? So that you have to avoid. So that kind of education might save plenty of lives. You know, the government, the central government, the helicopter will come very late. By the time, you know, everything is done. So that community resilience about the knowledge to understand where the vulnerability is and where is the retreat route, what is the retreat plan. And I say same thing to the earthquake also. If you go and tell every household that which area is risky in your structure and which is the safest place, or if you have to run away, which is the right route. Because if you run and the landslide comes, then you know, again, that is the thing. So it's a conversation with the community at the individual level, and is only the solution, you know, when everything is too late. We didn't do anything 40 years, 50 years. Now all forest is gone. The runoff is very high. water is coming. Now, it's too late to talk about, planning, landscaping and everything. We can do if we have a lot of time. At this time, we all have time to run away and save ourselves. So that is the only alternative left. So we should be resilient in terms of where the risk is, in terms of flood, in terms of landslides. And we should do, whatever we could. It doesn't mean that because it's already too late, we shouldn't do anything. Try it, although it may not be effective. Plant few trees, avoid certain areas, use bamboo. There are a lot of ideas. So definitely water crisis, the floods from Himalayan snow melted. So they say that by 2050, huge amount of water is going to come to the rivers because all the snow is melted and it will come, and that will bring flood. And there is already always flash flood, glacier melting that blocks the water. It becomes a ponding, and once the pond is burst, then all the downstream people are affected and damaged. That's happened. Glacier outburst, I think that's what they call. So that's also happening. So a lot of interrelated things are happening because of the climate. And of course, all that affects the health of the people, the lives of the people. And the thing that affects the lives of the people is also health, I think. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tej, for joining us. It was a fabulous lecture and even a better conversation.